Today, our conversation covers a variety of topics. We're talking about grief, energy protection, and trauma healing on our journey through life. We talk about how many ways angel messages come to us, whether it's through chance encounters, direct messages, or even talking to our cats. Archangel Michael comes up because, of course, he does, along with archangels Uriel and Raphael.
We also discuss the work we do as we continue our personal journeys. Remember, we are all in this together.
Stick with us until the end of the video to see where we end up. Let's start the conversation. Hey, Mystics. If you're new here, welcome. If you already know us, welcome back.
I'm Susie Parker Goins.
I'm Lisa Stewart.
And I'm Kai Bertrand. Welcome to the Mystic Mosaic Podcast. We're here to help clarify, illuminate, normalize, and encourage you as you develop your gifts so you can confidently build a sustainable lifestyle for you, your family, and even your career.
Here's our disclaimer. We are providing information to you to use as a launching point for your spiritual journey. We're not giving free readings nor medical advice. The information we provide here is for educational purposes only. And I don't want to say I'm at the age when all of my friends are dying, because it's like it's not me to focus on that. No.
Yeah.
In thinking about that, it almost really doesn't matter. I mean, because you can lose people at it.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, technically, I'm maybe considered at that age too, because I've had, people that I went to elementary school and high school with, they're gone already.
Yeah.
A really good friend of mine who was, we did everything together in our 20s. Like, she's gone.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the sister of my bestie from grade school and high school, her sister died, and I was like, what the hell,
Yeah. And so
it's a weird, interesting thing.
Yeah, admittedly, when you get older, like, more of the people that start dropping off like flies, for sure. But but it's like, regardless of how old you are, it's like, depending on your circumstances and where you live. I've met some people who are like, I grew up with some people, and they didn't make it till their 20s because they were running with gangs and stuff, and they were dead before they were 30. So
yeah, and it's still really hard when somebody I know directly passes. And it's not that I think I have this superpower that everybody's immortal, but it's still like, oh, there's a slot now that's not got that person in it. So
yeah. I last month I walked out into the big room and Andrew said, I have some sad news. Our friend died. He had a sense of humor and he'd laugh at all my jokes. And then one day he's not there. And it's like, damn. And he died in his sleep. His wife said he gasped for air a couple of times, had a heart attack, and he was gone. Yeah. Just like that. No notice, right? No heads up. So like, hug your family.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard when, when people pass away, because it's like, is it worse when it's a lingering death or when it's sudden?
Yeah.
It's just, because when it's sudden, it's like, well, he didn't suffer good. But at the same time, damn it,
Yeah. Or having that preparatory, nobody can really prepare. My mom was sick for 2 years. But that being said, I was kept on the outside. My younger sister and I were kept on the outside because they wanted to protect us. But when she finally died, that's an interesting word. It's like, okay, I guess I was ready. I don't know. It's been almost 50 years. So
yeah,
I don't think anybody really ever gets prepared. I don't think.
No.
Other practitioners I know have passed on. One of them elected to call her own time. she had inoperable or incurable stuff. So she said, nope, she's doing it on her own terms. So I was like, oh, okay. Okay. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
So why they call
I've
it this?
I've got this idea in my head that, and when I'm in my mid 70s, I read a long time ago this article about a woman who did things on her own terms, right? She had something that was incurable and she was like, So she picked up a cocktail from the internet that showed her how to take her own life. And she told her husband about it. And so they made plans to say goodbye to her family, her grandchildren, everything. They had a big party. And then one weekend they go to the beach and she's like, you cannot touch me. Don't touch me. We're just gonna have a picnic. And then I'm going to take my phenobarbital and my other cocktails. And she walked him through exactly what was going to happen to her body. And she goes, I've done this in the most safe, most serene way I possibly can. Once I'm gone, then call the paramedics, but don't touch me because you'll be implicated. And he's like, and this was really from his point of view. And he's like, she did everything. He goes, I just sat there and watched. And, we had our picnic and then she said goodbye. She went under and I timed it the way she told me to. And then the paramedics and the police came. And so that allowed him to keep separate and, barring any opportunity to be implicated in her death, so it was a complete and utter suicide. And I'm like, that's an option for me.
Yeah, see, I don't know if I would take that route, just because, the money aspect for my family, that would be a hardship. So if I was going to do life insurance, where right now I don't have any, but I will, then that negates the possibility of suicide, because insurance won't pay out on a suicide. That would be my concern, is the financial aspect of it.
Yeah, there is a book called I'm Dead, Now What? And I've got it. I think I know where it's at. I just haven't opened it because that's my concern. Christopher came in when he turned 22 in February and said, what if you die and I still need you? And that still makes me, so I don't want to push adulthood. I don't know. I don't want them to get hit with the mortgage or property taxes without them knowing what's going on. So unlike my dad, I'm letting people into the process as much as they want to come.
When I first learned about how we take forks, how we create our own forks, right? Every decision that we make allows us to step left and continue forward, step right, or whatever that looks like to you. Mm-hmm. And one day I thought about it, and I thought about all the other leases I left behind, right? That kind of fragmented mm-hmm. away from me. Mm-hmm. And I was talking with my friend Justin, whom I still would love you to meet. But I was talking to him one day and I said that I feel a sense of responsibility to all the other leases out there. The leases that chose to stay behind, who chose to stay with the psychopath, who chose to stay with the ex-husband, who chose to, all of these things because she wasn't strong enough. So now she's pregnant and she's saddled with, a passel of kids, or, she's suicidal, or she's drug dependent, she's got an addiction, whatever those things are. I feel like no matter what decision I make today, that I make it in concert for all of them. So that way, whatever reason, if they need to feel good energy coming their way, that I'm always thinking of them when I make that next decision. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
is that healthy?
I think so, in the way that you've looked at it, because it's not a matter of, oh, I have to do this because of that. It's more like I'm doing this, and this is like to lend strength to. It's almost like validating that you've made the right choices, because if you didn't make that choice, that's where you would be. Right. Because that's the way I look at it. Like, I think back about what my life would have been like had I just continued to stay in Hawaii and I never left. And I was just like, thank God I left. because I mean, not because I would not have loved my life in Hawaii, because I mean, in a way I did it, but there was a lot of things that were wrong there. And if I would not have accomplished half of what I have right now.
Yeah.
If I had stayed, not half. Like
Yeah.
I spent years wanting to write something, and then I came here and it happened. You know, like the decisions that you make are like validating, like, yes, this is where you're supposed to go, because that's where you would have been if you hadn't done this. So, yeah.
Yeah. I feel the same way about leaving Texas. We would have still had family with us, but I know I would not be, like Kai said, I would not be as far as I am spiritually. And it's totally toxic for me there. Other people may thrive in it. I don't. And then I look and see all those different paths and I try not to fret about it. But to your point, Lisa, you don't have guilt around it. You're not saying this is where I am and I should feel bad about having it this much better. So I think that's a good thing. And then, like I love to say about Peter Levine, he says, as I heal, you heal. And as you heal, I heal. So every decision you make that's for your healing helps to
Yeah.
heal them.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't change those potential outcomes necessarily, but I just don't see how people cannot heal. There's so much that they can do that's even just saying one nice thing, but then I teeter on that judgment thing. How can you not be healing? It's like, no, some people they're on their path. But yeah, in Texas,
Yeah.
I would be cranky and toxic and
Yeah.
always angry because they piss me off so much.
Yeah. I couldn't believe how angry I was in North Carolina. And I'm like, I got to get the F out of here. This is, I couldn't wait to start my spiritual journey, unbeknownst to me, right? I knew that there was something more out there. And it was funny because like a certain birthday would come up and I would go, maybe this is the day that something unlocks for me, right? This is the birthday something unlocks. I knew there's something out there, something on the other side. And I wanted it so bad. And I'm like, staying here is not going to make that happen. So let's just go. So we decided to move to the state of Washington without ever having set a foot in it.
So Susie, what I did this weekend when I was working on my shadow self stuff, because that's what I feel like, I was telling Lisa earlier that I feel like the next thing that's coming in my life is going to be pretty big. So I needed to like clean stuff up, so to speak.
Clean out the fridge.
Yeah, do the next thing. And because I realized that I had all this like major resentment on stuff. And I couldn't figure out where it was coming from, because I'm like, some of it was my ancestors. So I took care of that. Some of it was past life stuff. So I took care of that. And some of it was just mine, right? This intense frustration. And and the past life stuff was really, really prevalent. And actually, I still have to deal with that a little bit, because I guess in a past life, I must have been a princess or some kind of royalty. And I was demanding royalty, like one of those, like, you will do what I tell you to do, or, that kind of thing. And so some of that leached through, a lot of it leached through. And even though my personality is not really like that, I realized when I was a kid, I was actually a lot like that. But then, you're closer to the other side when you're younger than, and as time went on, I was just like, what the hell? What am I thinking? But that's that part of me, like that inner child kind of thing is still there, right? And so I was like, talking to her, and she was like, no, I'm not, I don't want any, I don't care. She was like adamant, like just refused. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do with this. I told my guides this. I'm just like, what do I do with this part of myself? Because she will not integrate and she will not back down. Like, what do I do with this? I'm not going to spend the rest of my life fighting with her. I'm not going to do it. And so they said, it's time to switch dimensions. I was like, huh? So
Excuse me?
this is what they had me do, because we understand that there is the the veil that we step through while we die, right? This is considered like all the stuff that we know is familiar is technically one dimension. There are millions of others, right?
Yeah.
And so basically what they said was, what we need to do is pull up the dimension that's so close to ours, whereas this part here will actually be happy there, and the part that you need to be happy here is there. So then you swap.
Okay,
Cool.
I'm not wrapping my head around that. Are you talking about this aspect of you who was adamant
Mm-hmm.
she stays in a dimension that you are not directly connected to?
Yes. So basically, it's like, here's me, and here's the other me in the other dimension, right? So there's a part of me here that's not happy, right? There's a part over here that's not happy. But if they were switched, they would actually be happy in the opposite dimensions. So that's what I did.
Okay.
Because the other me,
Okay.
because the two of us, we have the same memories, we have the same life experiences, we have everything is exactly the same, except for these two aspects of ourselves that are not happy. So if you
Okay.
switch them, then they actually become content in the opposite dimensions. Because that was the resonance I was looking for. I'm like, I need the exact same thing as me, with one exception, that I need to find the piece that resonates more with me here, and where that part, the part of me that was here, can be happy over there.
Okay.
And so I
Okay.
switched them.
So how do you
All
feel?
right.
I actually feel pretty damn good.
That's awesome.
Good.
Okay. And much more, I mean, like I said, the princess thing still pops up, but it's not nearly as, it's almost like there's no fuel behind it. You know
Is
what
it
I
like
mean?
an echo maybe?
Yeah. And so I just need to kind of clear out the rest of that, and of course there's more shadow work stuff that has to be done, because it's a never ending process. Actually writing about that on my blog post. That's like my next thing that I'm going to be yakking about, is shadow work. But yeah, and like I said, it's not something that I would have ever told anybody to do. But yeah, and and literally, like I saw the wall, the dimension, and here's me on the other side of the wall. And I'm like, okay, do you want to do this? They're like, well, you're not happy, I'm not happy. The parts of us would be happier in the other dimension, so let's just do it. I'm like, okay. And it was almost like like it was like a little encapsulated tube kind of thing. And I was like, here you go. She gave me hers, and it was like, we just, and then yeah. And then after that, like, it's almost like this sense of rage that I've always had just kind of went,
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm a lot calmer, like internally, than I used to. Yeah, it was just like, wow. And the thing is, like, it wasn't like this earth-shattering kind of thing. It was just like this subtle kind of like everything just kind of like settling down.
I had a client who had an experience like that too this Saturday. Of course, I was dealing with a practitioner who was trying to impose herself and do shit while I was doing a particularly intense session, and I was aware of it. So I threw up more shielding or between us. But the client said that her mind was actually quiet for the first time in a long time.
Oh.
And I think that's huge. So now I'm looking at what you're talking about, going, okay, what can I switch? How can I rearrange my psyche? And it's like, it's not that easy, I know, but I'm sure there's quite a bit that I can shift around. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you. Because when I had a reading with my soul counsel, she told me I would be doing some dimension shifting, dimension hopping. And I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I've heard of it before, but I didn't know what it entailed. And it does make me wonder, because I feel, I hear what you're saying and I go, I wonder if I'm feeling that too. Because when I allow people to read me, they all say there's something inside me that's jumpy. And I'm like, I don't think so, unless I've denied it. I do myself to stay focused, stay calm, stay centered. But still, I can be the most grounded, and people are like, nah, I still feel something inside there. And I'm like, well, then it must be foreign to me, because I don't know. So,
We'll see how that works out. But I mean, my energy is better, and I think that would be helpful towards manifestation, because I felt like I was fighting myself the whole time, like wanting to do this, and like, just like, because it's the whole point of manifestation is like you create the intention and you let go of it, right? And that other part of me would constantly be like, well, did I do it right? Like, was that wrong? Like, why is it taking so, and so it was like that constant questioning would send out that negativity, then that would then negate what I sent out, right? So it was like this constant, I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. And so now I feel like, when I say something like, nothing can stand in the way of my good, that actually feels like it's a complete thought and there's nothing else behind it. There's nothing chasing it. There's nothing else that is doubting it or trying to push it, or it's just done. So
not being coerced.
Yeah. And it just feels like, okay, just let that thought sit out there in the universe, and then I feel like I can kind of sit back and let that happen.
Okay, that's interesting. Because when I say that, I still feel resistance. I'm making notes on this too. The feeling of being found out.
There are a
And that
lot of witches and shamans who I'm reading online who are expressing how they're going through their shadow work and discovering that, they've got ancestors who died at the stake and who are wrangling with that now. And over the weekend, I was thinking, I wish I knew my family lineage, because my mother was so closed mouth about everything that I want to know if I'm a descendant of one of the witches that died. And I'm like, you know what? I can talk to my spirit guides. I can talk to my ancestors. They can let me know. And like over the weekend, it was just so good to get away. Over the weekend, every time I had a thought, it's like, well, you can ask your ancestors. You can ask your ancestors. And I'm like, hey, I can ask my ancestors. So as long as I remember that, then I can start making an intentional moment to sit back, quiet my mind, and start asking questions. Because
yeah, past life work is really helpful for that. I mean, I found past lives that were associated with other in-laws there, including being burned at the stake at the behest and accusation of one. And so I'm like, and so that really did spark a whole lot of anger on my part earlier on, like, a couple of decades ago.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of our family members, they come back to us in our, we all kind of incarnate together again. And but and then I'm sure like my adopted mother and my sister, like like it just feels like they were with me at some point, but I've never looked at it. So yeah, so souls tend to reincarnate together for different purposes.
Yeah.
So
I like to put it in the terms of like, we're like this great big litter of souls and we kind of roll around like puppies do. explore
Mhm.
different aspects. Like, let's look at power, let's
Yeah.
look at relationships, love, let's look at money and all that stuff. So,
Mhm.
yeah. And frequently people say, I feel like I've lived in this time before, and it takes just a second for me to check and say, yeah. So listening to your intuition about it, yeah, and trusting it.
What,
And that's just a
what do
whole
you,
nother thing. So,
Susie, what do you mean by that? I feel like I've lived this lifetime before. Can you explain that?
when folks say I have a feeling that I have known this person before,
Oh,
and that sort of thing. So when they get that
okay.
inkling, when I talk about past lives, it's like, look at those things that you resonate with. For me, it's Renoir. I love
Mhm.
his art,
Mhm.
and I
Surratt. Yeah.
just, yeah, we've had that conversation that we just resonated with it. So I did a little more delving into it, and it's like, yeah, those folks who say, I feel like I've been Catherine the Great, and I'm like, why are you a housewife here in Mukilteo? And so what I realized, I feel that there are aspects of some of these really impactful things. So there's a slice of Joan of Arc that lives in New Jersey, and a slice of her that lives in Seattle and stuff like that. I don't see how a soul like that could be reduced down to just hanging out in Bothell. I see, I can understand how a soul would want to take a break, but I also think, like, I don't know, this is getting into judging other practitioners, but somebody's going to pander to another person and say, yes, you were Marie Antoinette. I was like, I don't grok to that. So I don't know if that's my ego stepping in, but it's no, I think we can all have aspects of a different soul.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Susie, because I struggled with so many practitioners saying, I like working with Archangel Michael. Well, when you think of Michael, any Michael, you think of an individual, a whole individual. He's either alive or he's dead. But in the case of Archangel Michael, he's infinite. And my question was, well, how can all of you work with Archangel Michael at the same time? Can he spread himself? Can he separate himself? And then I come talk to you, and you're like, so we've got these aspects, right? And I may not be the full aspect of Copernicus, but I might have a tiny aspect of him that helps me champion his cause, and lends itself into other inclinations that I might have. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. So that way,
Yeah.
when 100 people are calling on Archangel Michael at the same time, there are aspects of him going out, and those aspects are so incredibly powerful that he can go help Kai, and he can light her little shield on fire as she's going through a burning house, and it still help me at the same time, and help me sleep and protect my motel room from miscreants and nasty entities. And so that starts to make more sense to me.
Well, and
Yeah,
the
we
other
can't
thing too
diminish
is,
source. We
and
can't
power
diminish
is,
source.
yeah, and power is infinite,
uh,
you know,
you said
so
that Michael is infinite. We don't
yeah.
diminish him. And from my experience, he shows up in different guises, but that goes into my whole let's make source accessible. So one time I was working with somebody, and he had shown up in, like, shirtless and bib overalls. And he kind of struts over to her and he says, you want to touch my sword? And she blushed and giggled, and I couldn't help it for about 5 minutes. And then other times he's in this really sharp suit and all this stuff. But it's what source, yeah, we can't diminish source, but it definitely can be so agile or so flexible that it just shows up how it needs to for us in the moment. So yeah, there's
Can
no
I
reason why you can't have a big chunk of Copernicus in there.
I want to share with you the first time I met Archangel. He introduced himself to me, and he was he dressed in a hoodie, like a Pacific Northwest hoodie and slacks, and he was coming down from the clouds like in Harry Potter, where they had taken the port key and they were all kind of walking down onto the ground. That's how he was going. He's like, hi, and I'm like, well, hello there. And then I don't remember the rest of it.
because I'm, my perception is like, if you're an angel, damn it, you better be wearing a robe. That's what I'm saying, right? So when they show up, I see them wearing robes. I mean, occasionally there've been a couple times when I've seen him and he's actually dressed like a biker, and I'm just like, what's this about, man? He's just like changing it up. I'm like, okay.
Cracking his neck.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, fine. But yeah, most of the time, like when I see angels, that's my perception of them. I'm like, because for me, it helps with the identification of them. Because I don't necessarily see their faces. I do feel their energy, but at the same time, like, so if I'm actually looking at them, I'm like, just give me the robe. And you can have wings or not, whatever, but at least like, so there's a distinctive type of robe that I usually see that I'm like, oh, okay, angel, it's like the instant peg, right? But yeah, especially, well, and Raphael, sometimes he's shown up, like one time he showed up with a t-shirt and shorts. I'm like, what is this, man?
On vacation.
Yeah, and I was like, what is this? And he was just like, what do you want? Just tell me what you want. So
Kai, I want to share with Susie what I experienced this weekend, just briefly, just quickly. So I think I had my first visual angel sighting, Susie, this weekend. Andrew and I went to Port Townsend for the Cider Fest. And this was Saturday. And I sent some photos to Kai, and I'm happy to send them to you too, because when I walked in, it was a farm, a working farm with a big barn where they would hold events as well. And so they had a bandstand there. Nobody was at the bandstand, but they were playing music. And then they had a few vendors inside the barn, just a handful. And one of them was a sweets vendor, right? Pies, cookies, brownies, fudge, you name it. And then, of course, on the other side, they had a tap room. And then out back, they had a couple of banjo players and families out there. And they were crushing real apple cider. So good, which I think apple cider might be my elixir for the whole event. Anyway, so Andrew gets a glass of wine and we go out to the balcony and we sit down for a moment. And I'm taking a deep breath. I'm enjoying the lovely afternoon. It's quiet. It's gorgeous. And I'm just kind of, glazing, looking around, and I see this streak going across the sky back into the barn. Are you you're familiar with the J.J. Abrams lens flare concept, right?
Yes.
That's what this
His
looked
wife
like.
made him swear never to use it again.
So I'm like, what the hell? Well, when I had walked into the barn earlier, it's like, sense where you are, sense your energies. And I'm hearing you and Kai, sense your energies, make sure you know where you are. And suddenly my eyes look up to the loft, and it's a mini loft, but I look up, it's kind of dark, but I'm like, do I sense angel essence? Okay. I don't see anything. Then we go back to the tap room, come out to the balcony, and hanging out there. And that's when I see the J.J. Abrams lens flare swooping from the sky back into the barn. So I'm like, I haven't taken pictures that, Andrew, I think I just saw an angel, but I got to take some pictures. I'm going to send these to Kai to see if I can get her impressions. So I go back in, take pictures, panoramic picture, this, that, the other. I'm like, this is what I got. What do you know? And she's like, yeah, I think that there is a guardian angel that's attached to the guy that's sitting at the table there. And I'm like, yes, I saw it. Yes. So then I don't know if I actually said the rest of my story, Kai, but Andrew and I thought that I'd lost my glasses. And so we were going to race back to the motel to see if my glasses were still there. And so we're in the car and we're driving down the driveway, and there's, tall weeds to my right. And I'm just kind of glazing, looking, and I see something dark kind of hop through the weeds. And I'm like, oh, hell no. This was not an animal. It was a dark shadow. And I'm like, ew, we're out of here.
I actually did go talk to that couple that owned the sweets table. I saw them the following day at another cider fest. And that was like my first, no, it wasn't my first. Because I've told other people, like, when they're grieving over grandparents who've just died and wondering whether or not their grandparents saw their new baby, as they're cradling their infant. And I'm like, your grandmother just showed up. Nope, here's your grandfather. He's there too. And then suddenly, they break out in tears. And I thought of you, Kai, today or yesterday when I'm at the second cider fest. It's the Finn River Cider Fest. And I see the couple. He walks away and I go up to her. She doesn't have any more customers. And we had just picked up a few bites from them. And I said to her, hey, now that you don't have any customers standing around, I have a personal question. She's like, yeah, what's that? And I said, are you spiritual? How spiritual are you? She goes, oh, we're very spiritual. And I'm like, okay, so I have something to share. And I told her about what I saw the day before. And she started to well up. She started to get teary-eyed. And she's like, thank you so much for that message. We just had a close friend of ours, a dear friend of ours, die last week. And I can't thank you enough for giving me that message. Now I'm starting to tear up. And I didn't tear up then, but I was just like so heartened that I could give her this note and that she was accepting of it. And she just gave me this really big hug. She goes, oh my God, thank you so much. You just got a special gift. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm like, you're so welcome. Anything I can do to help. So.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Getting those reassurances is it's really cool. I did a couple of readings and one woman was just sitting there and just stoic. She wasn't going to give anything, and that's fine. But afterwards she said, no, don't put the cards away. And then she said, this is what that message meant to me. And so those moments when you hit it and it just reiterates it confirms for me just the work that we do is so useful and important.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I'm making notes about some of this stuff we talked about. And there is a part of me that feels so like, no, you don't need to step out and do this. And now it's like, yes, we can, because we are doing things. So getting more of those stories from other practitioners really just, it's very heartening.
It is. And I don't think I heard my spirit guide say go. He might have, but it was more of a claircognizant. And I got this pressure from the back, right? Like hands on my shoulders going, go, you got an opening now, go. And I'm like, okay, stepping in. Now, the conversation got convoluted and complicated pretty quickly because I told her, I'm studying to become a shaman and I think I saw an angel. And so I shared this with a friend of mine who is a kahuna, and she was telling me that it was a spirit guide for your husband. And I think she misinterpreted it, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and I'm going to let her take the message the way she wants to take it. And if she feels that the spirit guide for him is really a message from their late friend, I'm not going to tell her what she should or should not believe or take from that message. So I'm like, okay, well, next time, Lisa, make sure your message is a little more clear when you're trying to convey it.
Hence the power of language.
Stay tuned next week.
Does Lisa actually clarify her language? Stay tuned to find out.
So anyway, but I wanted to share that. So that was
I've
really
had
cool.
angels have physicalized in front of me, and it's usually at those moments when I just was lost. I was going to take a bus in, and I was standing at a bus stop in Edmonds, and this guy walked up, and he was like, "I'm on my way to the halfway house. I'm going to see my girlfriend. You waiting for a bus?" And I went, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, they don't run on Sundays here." And he walked me to another place, and we had a lovely conversation. And then once I got on the bus, I turned around and he was gone. And another time, my car pooped out and my battery died at the credit union. and they couldn't help me because of liability and all of that. And I had Joey, so he was just a few months old, and I'm just on my steering wheel going, fuck, fuck, fuck. And then this guy shows up. He says, I can help you. And so we got my car jumped, and I made the promise I was going to go replace my battery. And then I got back in the car, and there was no trace of him around, not even a truck. So I know they can come in body and help you. And I did go and get the new battery, by the way. So I wasn't going to renege on that promise because, yeah. So, yeah, seeing angels I'm I'm not at that point where I'm seeing the dark. I think I'm doing kind of like uh, not preliminary, proactive thing. So, like when I went into the event on Saturday, I was like, okay, we're doing the thing, and then we're doing the pockets and all, setting up my shields. And then I saw that practitioner sitting across from me, and I went, more, more. And just, so I don't see the things around her. I don't know if, okay, so if you go in and you're looking for stuff, yeah, you're going to find it. Is that necessarily a good thing to do?
I actually don't go in looking for stuff
Okay.
because, and the reason why I don't is because if you're looking for it, you're going to find it because it's everywhere.
Right.
Like it is literally everywhere. And so, if I spent all my time looking at stuff, I would never get anything done because I literally do this thing like, wow, look at that. Whoa, what the hell? It's like because they're all different. They don't all look the same. It's like it's like that like the Monsters Inc. Animated film, right? Like all the monsters are different. It's the same thing. Like they all have different configurations. Some have really sharp teeth, some have claws, some are slimy, they're all different. And so if I spent my time, looking at them and trying to categorize them, and because that's what my scientifically geared brain likes to do, right? This goes here, this goes there, that kind of stuff. I never get anything done. Like if I'm just going to go to the grocery store, I'll see all this stuff just wandering around, as well as the stuff attached to the people. And I'm like, if I have to think about the fact that I'm standing in line behind this guy who's got a thing that had turned to look at me, then I won't pay attention. I won't do what I need to do. Right. So most of the time I just ignore that.
Okay, preemptive. That's the word I was thinking of. So there, I'm done interrupting. Okay, preemptively look. Okay.
But that makes perfect sense. Like, especially if I'm going to go to a fair, I always have my shields up. I normally put some sort of shield on my table, or I'm prepared to do that. Like I always have like an energy kind of feel to my table that I always put on. And that's both protective and attractive at the same time, just so that, that kind of stuff. Anytime I go into, so like Lisa had sent us a thing about going to that event, for the ghosts going through like a haunted house kind of deal, whatever, stuff like that. I always have my shields up, but at the same time, because especially if I'm going as a spectator, then I turn all the filters off and I'm like, so it just depends. I'm very conscious now about when I put my shields up, when I don't, what are the circumstances. And of course my shield, does its own thing because I told it to. So there are times when I'm not paying attention. I mean, there has been a couple times when I've just been somewhere and I'm like so tired that I can't focus. I'm just like, okay, just get what you came for, get what you came for. And I'm walking through, and I feel like this big like doom against my shield, and I'm like, I turn around and here's this thing that's just like, I'll be like, oh no. So my shield did its job, and I have to have that. And then there are times when like especially if I'm in a place where things are really tense. Like if I'm in the grocery store at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody's tired, everybody's rushing, everybody's trying to get the hell out of there because they're hungry and they want to go home, right? So everybody's like just right on the edge. And so I make sure I shut everything off then so that I just get in, get what I need, and I don't feel anything.
Mhm.
So, so the preemptive thing is really important. I mean, I tend to do the shopping like and being in traffic when most people are not on the road to avoid like the road rage, the impatience, all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, maybe
Preemptive
it's
is good.
kind of annoying, but that I have to do that. But it's like it helps me keep my sanity.
I wanted to share a couple of things. I want to go back to angels manifesting. I think back in my 20s, I think I actually interacted with an angel that was looking out on my behalf. And I was thinking about this really hard the other night. I think it's happened to me twice. The second time, I can't remember what it was, but the first time was abundantly clear. I was living in Chicago, psycho boyfriend. He wouldn't work, and we lived out in the burbs, and I would take the train into the loop, and then I would catch a bus to get to the NBC tower. And I worked on the 74th floor for the management company of that building. And I was just feeling lost and hopeless. And I was just going through the grind, it's like, okay, another day, another dollar. Let's see how far this can stretch, reading, to get my mind off of what's going on in my life. Because in the 20s, everything's a train wreck. But I was on a train, there was no wreck. And there was one time, got on the train, and this big guy, like, it's always a two-seater, 2 seats over here, 2 seats over there. So I get in the inside seat against the window, prop my legs up against the seat in front of me, nestle in for another 45 minutes. And everybody was walking by. Everybody's walking by. They wouldn't sit with me, wouldn't sit with me. I didn't care. Not a popularity contest. Just try to get to Chicago. This big guy, like giant guy. Swear to God, he was like 7 foot. Sat down next to me, and he was not as big as he was tall, but he filled a seat. And he started talking. And I'm feeling really depressed, really low. And he starts talking to me, trying to bolster me, trying to lift me up. And at which point he was like, don't give up. I hadn't said anything to him. He's like, don't give up. Whatever you do, do not give up. I'm telling you, don't give up. I mean, this guy was insistent because his legs were as long as his torso. And so it's kind of like he wedged himself up against the seat too. And he was towering over me. And he's like, don't give up. Don't give up. And he's pounding on his thigh. Don't give up. And I'm like, okay. And I never saw him again. We all got up, the train stopped, we all departed. I looked for him the next day, never saw him again. And I want to say there was another time somebody kind of stepped in and intervened in my life. And I wonder, since my father took his own life, I wonder if angels watch us and say the time to intervene in somebody's life is not when they start thinking about suicide, but like a step or two before that. Because I hadn't thought about suicide, right? Suicide was not an option. I'm like, there's something out there for me. I need to find it. So I was, Aries first house. I'm going to do this thing, but it was a struggle because I had no family. I had the psychopath, so I was not lost so much, but just didn't feel secure. I didn't feel like I had any, network. Not network, but network is a good one. But it's kind of like home base, right? I didn't feel secure. And I'm like, all right, I have a job, I have a place to live, I'm okay. But still, in your 20s, there's that nagging doubt about what the hell is going to happen next. And I think he was an angel.
Yeah, all this time later, you haven't given up. So, yeah, I like how they manifest in a variety of ways. I mean, they get your attention.
And he was the only guy on the train that didn't have a newspaper. Everybody else had newspapers to read because this was in the 90s. We didn't have internet. Everybody had a newspaper. He did not have a newspaper. He came in with an agenda.
Okay.
So now that I think about it, I find that.
And that's why nobody else sat next to you, because he had scoped out that seat. He's like, nope, that's mine.
I shielded, at least I think I did. And this is where I need either validation or guidance. I believe that I shielded all my windows and my door and put another, demon bag out there, a D bag out there outside of my door. That's what I'll call it. And because I'm like super protective of my cats now, and I want to make sure nothing happens to them when I'm gone. And I'm like, please be alive, please be alive, please be alive when I get home. They seemed fine, but I also thought they were fine until you're like, yeah, no, mutants had a couple of psychic hits. And I'm like, wait, what? No. So yeah, it's really trying to understand, making sure that my intention for shielding my windows and barricading them before I leave was on point.
Okay, so what I'm hearing about that is that your windows are fine. The thing is that because you live in an apartment, because of what they're showing me is like, remember how like I'm seeing a vision of myself with things coming through the wall. So you have to remember to like create just create a shield and just extend it all the way out, so that it covers windows, doors, floor, ceiling, everything at the same time. So it's not just, okay, here's the window, here's the door. It's literally, here's a cube and then out, expand it to the entire space. And then you'll be good. I'm hearing the cats are fine. Like they had, like they heard something on the other side that was like talking to them and like maybe trying to scare them or whatever, but they were both like, eh. So they're fine. They were fine while you guys were away. It wasn't a big deal.
So going back to the windows then, so you said the windows are fine. So are they fine because I created a barricade, or are they fine because they're fine? Did I do a good enough job?
You created a barricade.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that I was doing it correctly and doing it soundly enough.
Yeah, no, it's like what you did is fine. But I just got like I said, I just got the impression that it was like you did the obvious entrances, like
Yeah.
windows and doors.
Yeah.
So yeah, in your case, because of the fact that you need to do ceiling and walls and floor. So it needs to literally be an entire space.
I did that for the motel room because I'm like, there's some fae in here, but I felt almost a portal in the closet, and I'm like, because I'm going along, I opened up my little bag of salt and I had my selenite stick and I'm cleaning the corners, and then I was going to do the barricades and the energy out that you had taught me in your course. And I'm going into the closet and I'm like, I think there's a portal here. And so I don't know if what I sensed was correct, but at the same time, in talking with you and Susie, both of you do a good job of validating what it is I'm sensing.
Yeah, usually with portals, if you get a sensation of like, like a tornado, like a swirl of energy, that's usually indicative of a portal.
Do I have the capability of closing that portal down, or does it take a stronger shaman to do something like that, or an angel? Maybe I could just call in an angel and have them do it.
You could probably close down smaller ones, but like what I mean by that is like smaller is not necessarily in reference to size. It's in reference to strength. So even if it was like a tall, because usually they're ovalish is how I view them. Sometimes they're like this, sometimes they're like, room size, but like depending on how much power is in them, then that would make the difference. Because I've seen some really big ones that were not very strong at all, and they were just kind of there. Like I said, I kind of view portals depending on what's happening with them as like, the universe just kind of like burping for a minute and then they close. And so I don't think anything, it's like an adjustment in the energy kind of deal. Like, so, then they close and they go away. It's not a big deal. The ones that stay open, that have power behind them, that means that there was intent when they were created, either from our side or from the other side. And usually if it's open and being held open by the other side, that means things are stepping through that we probably don't want. And if it's that kind of a thing, then at this point in time, I don't think you have enough ability, like just enough ability to gather that much strength to close something like that. So in that case, yeah, I would call an angel. You could just ask your guides, like, hey, can you guys find somebody that can help me shut this down? And then, then they will call out to whomever, they need to, that can come in and assist with that. As long as you remember, this is one of those things where you have to ask for help. And then you have to remember that they are there to assist you. When you say, can you help me with this? Or you have to be specific and say, can you do it for me? Like that's the power of language thing that we're going to talk about, which I never thought about, but yeah, because it makes a difference, because they cannot interfere unless you say either, can you help me with this? Which means they will assist you, versus can you do it for me? Which means they will do it instead of you. You have to be precise like that.
Okay. Yeah, I did use language to that effect the second time when I was falling asleep. And I know that when I start to doze off, we got home early. We were watching a Harry Potter on our iPad, lights off, and I started to doze off. And suddenly I got images of nasty entities doing nasty things. And I woke up and I'm like, okay, my shields aren't strong enough for this realm. So that's when I called in the angels, ancestors, guardians, and guides. And, just said, hey, can you please, shield this room for us to sleep tonight? And so I went back to sleep and didn't have any more nightmares. So.
Yeah. Because sometimes when people speak, they don't realize the inaccuracy of words and language. And so when you deal with this kind of stuff, especially if you're going to ask for help from the other side, number one, you have to ask for help. And number two, you have to be careful how you word the kind of help you're asking for.
And wouldn't it help to define something like to our highest good, so you don't have just any kind of Joe Schmo guide coming in, or demons who say, oh, they called for help, I can help, and maybe it's a gnome who's going to fuck it all up. Do you have to be that particular?
Well, you can, and it depends. Like, for instance, if you're speaking to your guides, right, and you say, hey guides, can you help me find somebody? So they will obviously act in your highest good, right? But if you just cast out and say, anybody who can help me, then yeah, you're like, all bets are off. So again, that's that power of the language and being specific about who you speak to and what you say to who you're talking to.
So if I have already grounded myself for the day and I've cast the sacred circle, so I call on my angels, ancestors, guardians, and guides of the highest good and compassion, into my sacred circle, everybody else must leave. I close the sacred circle, and I put up my shields, and the shields also include, the ability to be porous enough to hear my angels, ancestors, and guides, and also porous enough to feel Andrew, the cats, and my friends, and enough to sense danger and the rest of it. I should be okay for the rest of the day, right? So when I arrive at a motel room and I'm calling on my angels, ancestors, guardians, and guides, I'm not saying angels, ancestors, guardians, guides of the highest trust, compassion. It's just they know who I'm calling. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's only if you were, in a new situation, like say for instance, like your car breaks down or something, and you're just like, I don't know what to do. That's when you can, that's when you cast out and be like, okay, I'm looking, angels, guardians, guides, please send me somebody who can who can help me in a situation, for my highest good, or if you want to put that in or not. But because of who you're speaking to and who you're directing, they will, bring you the right person or help you find the right option.
Right. Not sitting there at your steering wheel going, would somebody please help me? Because that's the wrong call.
Well, I was reading these books that I borrowed from a friend, and I can't remember what they're called. It was by the author's last name is Westerly, and he's got 4 books: Michael, Raphael, Uriel, and I forget what the last one is. But I was trying to read them, in order that I thought I wanted to read them. And then I picked up Uriel's book, and for some reason, like, I couldn't read it. Like, I was reading it and I was like not getting it. And I was like, what is the deal? And they're like, it's not time yet. Read them in order. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I was like, okay, well, what is the order then? And so I have the 4 books in front of me, and I shuffled the things around. I'm like, okay, that's the order. So I started reading them in order. So I come back to Uriel's book when it's time. And I'm sitting in bed and I'm reading the book, and my cat comes in and she jumps up on the bed and she stares up at the ceiling as she starts talking. Like how they're talking to birds or whatever, right? She starts
Chattering.
At the ceiling. And I'm looking up there, and I feel like there's something up there. Nothing bad, but I'm just like, what the heck is that? And then she's like chattering away at whatever. And then she gets off the bed and she leaves. And she's not freaked out. She's not, because she's actually quite skittish. Like sometimes, like, you drop something and she'll like, but yeah, she just was like, and I'm like, and I asked, I just asked Uriel, I'm like, are you here talking to my cat? He's like, yeah, she's pretty cool. I'm like, okay. But because I couldn't see him, right? I just heard him, and I'm like, what'd you say to her? He goes, oh, I told her that, that she's pretty cool. And if she wants to, she can say. If not, but I think that she should go because she might be bothering you while you're trying to read my book. And so she left. I was like,
that's a little bit arrogant.
But yeah, I was like, okay. And then she came back in, and she sat down, and I was still reading the book, and yeah, then she starts chattering away at him again, and I was like, cat's talking to an angel. Okay.
Yep.
So I just kept reading the book, and but yeah, well, while I was reading that series, that's when I actually got more, I guess I got closer to the archangels. Like usually I said I call in Michael to help me with specific types of healing, but then he came in for other stuff. And then Raphael has to do with like healing, but he also controls the wind. And so there have been a few times when I've been sitting in like a hot car or something, and I'm like, dude, I'm roasting. I'm like, Raphael, how about some breeze here? And then yeah, like 30 seconds later, it's like so I was like, thanks. Yeah.
Little Titanic scene.
But
it's like, oh, like, oh.
Kai's got the supermodel thing going on. The supermodel shaman. Yeah. But that gives me confirmation. When I was talking to Mutant a couple of weeks or so ago, and I saw him chattering like cats do to birds outside, and there were no birds. I'm like, dude, who are you talking to? He goes, dragon. I'm like, no shit. No shit. So
No, I love the book. I've got a book called Azrael Loves Chocolate. Michael's a jock. and it's by Chantel Lisette, but it's out of print. And I feel bad about talking about it because, it's like $100 on Amazon now. But
Yeah, but they
she
might
goes
be
through
able to
each of their
get
main.
a copy at like Half Price Books or someplace like that. I mean, I'm sure eBay, whatever.
Yeah, bookshop.org, that one is a cool thing. But
I'm sorry,
she writes the book.
you blurred out. Can you repeat that again, Susie?
Okay. I go to bookshop.org
Oh, okay.
and they will have stuff. And but what Lisette does is go through their mansions and talk about it. So that's where I developed that relationship of Michael, just like, my camp chairs that I use at events, and you can sling your arm back and go, yo. That's the way I see Michael, as being like that. And Azriel's that real nice, quiet guy in the office, and he just doesn't say much and it feels cooler around him. But I mean, that's an amazing book that really helped me shift a whole lot of that angels on high. It's like, no, man, they want to be there and help you. I found some at the dollar store. I found some small Archangel Michael statues that I took to consciousness raising group, but he's looking at it like, I don't look like that. Like, well, that's what this artist thinks. Yeah, well, whatever. Today, we freestyled our way through death, grief, angels, and more. We hope our conversation resonated with you. Please share your experiences in the comments.
And while you're waiting for our next upload, consider taking Kai's course on shielding at handsonfire.buzz. Listen to Susie's podcast at bluelightninghealing.com, and maybe consider picking up my 2023 digital calendar that includes moon phase planning at cocreatemagic.com.
You've been watching the Mystic Mosaic podcast. Hit the like button if you found the episode helpful. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified when we upload another video. It helps the algorithm to share this episode with people who want to learn more about this topic.
Look for a new episode from us every Thursday and join the conversation. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, let us know. Thanks for watching.
Until next time, stay grounded, shielded, and magical.